The Conservatives' attempt to try and force a new national inquiry into grooming gangs failed last night as MPs voted down that amendment.
Although, of course, it was never likely to succeed, was it? They never had the numbers to get it through. But I suppose it was a vote followed from the stream of posts by Elon Musk, of course, accusing Sir Keir Starmer and Minister Jess Phillips of failing the children involved. In a moment, we're going to be joined... Well, Marlon West is here. His daughter, Scarlett, was a victim of exploitation in Greater Manchester. And we've also got child safeguarding expert Simon Madeley. Right, well, let's talk more about this. We have child safeguarding consultant Simon Madeley with us, who's a former lead in child protection for the National Police Chiefs Council and former Chief of Norfolk Police. He joins us from Norwich. But first, let's speak to Marlon West, who has a really awful story, Marlon, about what happened to your daughter. She's waived her right to anonymity so that you can raise this issue. When did this all begin for your daughter, Scarlett?
Morning. So it started literally when she just turned 14. And I guess at the time, the red flags for me was she started going missing. So prior to that, she had her own horse. She went to school. There was no problems with school. At weekends, all she did was care about this horse. And then when she just turned 14, there was massive behaviour change. She wasn't looking after her horse, and then she started going missing. Missing
during the day, like playing truant from
overnight.
Schools? Overnight.
So she wouldn't be coming home. And prior to that, I'd never, ever had any problems with her. She was really prompt, and she'd be in for 8 o'clock.
I mean, girls at 13, 14, it's complicated as a dad, but for a father, this is your worst nightmare.
Worst nightmare. So I'd be driving around looking for her till 4 a.m.
And she would hate that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd knock on other parents' doors in the early hours of the morning, asking them to ask their child where Scarlett was.
And when did you realise that she had been groomed? And just to be clear, she was groomed by another girl, a white girl, because obviously the racial issue is part of this story, or some people want it to be for sure. But she was groomed by a white, older woman. Was she a woman or a girl, do you think, the person who had lured her in?
No, she was a woman.
She was a woman, a young one. When did you realise that she was now going missing and being exploited for sex, essentially, I'm afraid?
So the big red flag for me was not coming home at night when she's 14. And it would be one night here, one night there, and then it soon went into weeks where she would be missing. And
when she came home, you'd say, where have you been? I've been worried sick.
And then a behaviour change, so she'd be really aggressive to me. She'd have money on her. Then I'd be searching the bedroom, trying to find evidence. I'd be finding drugs in the bedroom. Again, prior to this, she was so anti-drugs.
And just to be clear, you single dad, full custody of your daughter at the time, trained nurse.
Trained nurse.
I mean, a very normal life. I mean, in many ways, your daughter went to a private school for a period of time.
Yes.
I'm saying all this because the context, I think, is important in terms of we think, and lots of the reporting has been that it was girls who were from broken homes, from care homes that were targeted, but actually, part of your point is to say it can happen to anybody.
It can happen to anyone. I speak to other families. It doesn't matter if you're from a working-class family or a middle-class family. These individuals don't care. Once they target your child, they will do anything to get them.
And your experience was, when you found out what was going on, when you'd seen what was happening, when you couldn't engage with your daughter about it, you tried to engage with the police, and you found... I mean, how did the police treat you?
Appalling. I'll give you one example. I tracked her down to a property. I rang the police, and they said, yeah, we'll turn up. So I rang them about 11 o'clock. It was the middle of winter. I'm sat outside. I could see men going into this property. And I was sat there till 5 a.m, and the police never turned up. And this happened a number of occasions.
And did you ever knock on the door yourself, or were you two?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Of this property where your daughter was
and
being held?
Yeah. and they wouldn't open the door. Now, on that instant, the police did get into the property during the day, and this is a missing from home police officers, and they sat there with the groomer and then text me and said, your daughter's safe. She's 14. Your daughter's safe. She's with...
And this was an older man?
This was with the female groomer. There was men in the property.
And can I ask you, Marlon, because, you know, we've had... I mean, we know this was not taken seriously. We've had the inquiries in Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, the National Inquiry, which have exposed this. Have you yourself had conversations with politicians? Have you talked to Keir Starmer or to Jess Phillips? Did you feel that they were listening to you?
So I met Jess Phillips in November. I would like to say she was very, very compassionate, and she's possibly the only politician that I've met that really knows her stuff around
Elon Musk said that she's a genocide rape apologist, and she was trying to cover things up?
I might disagree with Jess as far as a public inquiry, but absolutely not. She does not deserve that. She is a really, really compassionate...
And before we speak to Simon, obviously, time is short, but I just want to... If there was one burning question that you want a new, presumably a grooming inquiry,
yes,
what is it that isn't answered for you that would help you and help save other girls today from what happened to your daughter?
So there needs to be drastic change now. As far as I'm concerned, this is a national emergency, and it has been for a long time. A national public inquiry, firstly, would give survivors opportunity to discuss their case, because a lot of these survivors have never been listened to. My concerns with an independent inquiry is they're not enforceable. They do recommend recommendations, it's the J report, and none of the recommendations are actually put in place.
Some are now being put into place.
Only now.
We hope, well, finally.
Yeah.
May well be.
But how would you have an inquiry? I mean, how would the inquiry you think you'll be different from that?
Because it will be looking at individual cases. Right. These are, you know, ICSA, which is looking more at institutes.
Right.
It's only just touched on grooming. The J report, what is it, 6-7 years old? And the other things with grooming is it changes rapidly.
So it's the individual cases you want to
examine.
It's
the individual cases.
Well, because nobody was prosecuted in your daughter's case. Fine.
Nobody was
that's
prosecuted.
Dreadful. That's dreadful.
That's common theme with families.
Common theme. Right, Simon Bailey, former lead in child protection, National Police Chiefs Council, and so on, highly qualified. Simon, you've heard this dreadful story of Marlon. It is one, unfortunately, of many, many thousands. Why do you believe that there is no need for a new inquiry? Because what has already happened, what has already been revealed, is enough to create change and safe places now for girls who may have been targeted in the past.
So, first of all, it's obviously very, very difficult to listen to Marlon and to hear how he was clearly and Scarlett were let down by the police service. That is difficult to hear as a former Chief Constable. But what I can speak about with great confidence is that over a decade now, there have been multiple reviews into alleged grooming gangs. A huge number of recommendations have been made. A 7-year inquiry has shone a light on the broader child protection issues here in England and Wales. And 7,000 victims have had the courage and the confidence to come forward and provide testimony to truth hearings. I'm just not sure what a public inquiry would ascertain or how it would add any value to the picture that we already know, and we already know too well. I think it's now time for government, and it's cross-government, it's the responsibility of the Ministry of Justice, the Home Office, the Department for Education, Department for Science, Information and Technology, to come together and implement the recommendations from the J Review, to implement other recommendations more locally. And based upon my own experience of now having contributed to the independent inquiry, having read 400 or 500 cases where children have suffered serious harm through abuse or neglect, The system and government knows how to improve the response, how things have to be improved. And if those recommendations are implemented, we would see a transformation of the system, and we wouldn't have to listen to the most appalling cases as Marlon has just described.
Simon, there are people who disagree with you, politicians, but also victims who say you're just trying to cover up what happened. You don't want to be really honest about how bad things were. You don't want victims to be able to tell their stories. Your desire to move on is covering up the truth.
I'm sorry, I disagree with that. 7,000 victims came forward and talked about their abuse. The inquiries in the last decade have highlighted systematic failures across the safeguarding system. They've highlighted where police forces failed. They've highlighted where social care failed. I recognise that there has been limited personal accountability, but the fact is that a spotlight has been shone on the failings of the system. Now is the time, from my perspective, for government to come together to make sure that those failings become a horrible nightmare of the past, and we can look forward and actually say we have improved the system, we've made the changes and the recommendation of the 7-year inquiry. Now is the time for change.
All right, Simon Bailey, thank you. Marlon, just a final word to you, and we have run out of time, unfortunately,
Okay.
but just a final word. Is the obvious racial element that is being brought in here, which is that it was Asian gangs of Pakistani origin largely who are targeting white girls, that is the narrative that is there, that many feel hasn't been dug into deep enough, that we don't understand enough about whether there was a racial element to the grooming gangs. Is that something that concerns you, that needs digging into, or is it different?
No, it's definitely. I think we need to have clear and open conversations about this. Again, with a public inquiry that can look at this in more details.
OK. Well, Marlon...
But your willingness to have open conversations about it with us and with our viewers is really, really important. And what you're doing is very courageous, but it's very important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And we wish you and your daughter well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very important. Greater Manchester Police have said, we have a statement from them, we have wholeheartedly apologised to victims of child sexual exploitation who we badly let down for the hurt and ongoing trauma caused by what happened. We've accepted that our actions fell far short of the help that they had every right to expect from us. We've met with Scarlett and her father. We're conducting an extensive investigation into their allegations. While we understand the impact of their experience cannot be undone, we are confident that her experience of the Greater Manchester Police of today would be much improved from that of 2 years ago.
Well, we certainly hope that is true. And if you've been affected by any of these issues that we've been discussing, you can find advice and support on itv.com/helpline.